Great. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to what is going to be our final mobility debate for this election season. And we're so excited to have 6 of the candidates running for Burbank City Council with us. I'm Michael Schneider. I'm the founder and CEO of Streets for All, and Ellery Smith is also on part of our team. Just for clarification, we did extend an invite to all candidates, and these are the 6 candidates that were able to be here and join us tonight. We're going to give about 5 minutes, actually a little less, about 3 minutes of context and history about transportation and safety in general in the LA area. Then we'll go into candidate opening statements. It'll actually be 6 minutes instead of 5, 1 minute per candidate. After that, we have 7 curated questions. Each candidate will get 1 minute per question to answer. We'll then go into audience Q&A. There's a Q&A feature in Zoom. Please use it to ask questions and vote on other people's questions. And then at the end, each candidate will get 1 minute. Again, that says 5 minutes, but it will be 6 since we have 6 candidates. So a little bit of context and history, and a lot of these stats are general to LA County and the LA area in general, but they often apply to Burbank. First of all, gridlock is really expensive. And the way we choose to live, so car-dominated, costs our local economy $19 billion a year in lost productivity from people being stuck in traffic. Traffic's also really stressful. One study showed that domestic violence incidents actually went up on extra heavy traffic days. So the stress has real world consequences. Our air is not great, especially right now, but in general. And just by living in the LA area, you smoke up to 4 cigarettes per day, which is kind of insane. Sorry, I should say the equivalent of 4 cigarettes per day. The LA basin ranks worse than the nation for ozone emissions and 5th worst for particle pollution. And we have one of the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country. Our transportation system, as a result of being so car-centric, it also suffers for anyone outside of a car. The average bus in LA travels at less than 11 miles per hour. You could basically bike or scoot faster than that. And 2/3 of trips made, and it's not just the city, it's in the county of Los Angeles, in the urbanized areas, are less than 5 miles. 50% are less than 3 miles. So to say it differently, we get a lot of cars off the road if we gave people safe and reliable alternatives. So when you add all of this together, it's just not a pretty picture. And at Streets for All, we believe we can do better for our climate. We believe we can do better for safety and for future generations. So let's get into Burbank specifically. Burbank streets are not the safest. They're not as safe as they could be. And excluding the freeways that crisscross Burbank, 7 people have been killed, 43 severely injured, and over 1,000 injured on Burbank streets within the last 5 years. And you can see a map here to show where those injuries and fatalities have happened. Burbank does have a complete streets plan. This is the transit network. Some of this is built, some of it is not, but this would be a huge improvement if fully implemented to improve transit in the Burbank area. And Burbank is actually really well situated between the NoHo Pasadena BRT, Metrolink, and perhaps future electrification of Metrolink and high-speed rail to really be an amazing nexus for public transportation. Burbank also has, like many cities do in the area, lofty bike plans. This is the existing or planned bikeways. It looks pretty comprehensive, but when you zoom in and look at what's actually been implemented for all ages and abilities, class 1 or class 4, most of those just disappear. And this is a very incomplete network, and we think we can do better. A few key projects that we see in Burbank. The San Fernando Bikeway, really, really important, 3 miles of a class 1 bike path along San Fernando Boulevard. The NoHo to Pasadena BRT, which we'll be talking about more. The downtown San Fernando Boulevard reconfiguration, and of course, East Olive. Okay, so that's it for the updates. We're really looking forward to hearing from our candidates. We're now going to go to opening statements. Each candidate will get 1 minute. And please, just when you see the time is expiring, if you could please stop talking. And we're going to go ahead and start with Ed, whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Eddy Polon. I am a baker, a transportation commissioner, and a 33-year resident of our city, and I love Burbank. My journey to this campaign began in 2016 when I was involved in a near-fatal bicycle crash. Someone opened I was commuting home from my bakery on bicycle, and a parked car opened their door, sent me flying into traffic, 2 broken ribs and a punctured lung, And as I pulled myself off the pavement, I just got mad. I was mad that I was risking my life just riding a bicycle on a city street. So it turned me into an advocate. I became a Safe Streets advocate, which first led me to appointment on the Burbank Transportation Commission. And then this year, I'm a co-founder of Strong Towns Burbank. And now I am running for city council to try to really bring better, safer streets is my number one thing: housing affordability, the climate crisis, and a tough business economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddy. I apologize we have you listed as Ed, but we'll go ahead and call you Eddy. Emma.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Pinerio. I'm a third-generation Burbanker. After graduating from law school and working in Silicon Valley corporate sector, assisting an attorney providing legal services in the startup business involved in kind of the tech and sustainability sectors, I decided to return back to Burbank to work towards obtaining my law license. And I want to use my skills in education to better my hometown. So this November 5th, you'll see me on the ballot, number 4, as a candidate for Burbank City Council. First, I'd like to thank Streets for All for organizing this forum. I think it's so important to have transparent communication with the public, and it's such a key aspect of my campaign. So thank you for giving me this platform to connect on such a hot topic, mobility. Before deep diving into specific mobility questions, I just want to kind of emphasize the importance of collaboration and engagement with the community to implement Burbank's mobility plan. So I look forward to this discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. John.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Parr. I'm a comedian that lives in Burbank. The majority of my work has centered on going to city council meetings and speaking on real issues, but with a comedic slant. I'm excited to try and make the leap to being an actual city council member. Also, as a recent father, I just had 2 little bedittos. I love walking the streets of Burbank with my family. We go to Verdugo Park almost every day. And it's great, but it has made me more vigilant towards the potential dangers that exist for all pedestrians. I want to make sure our streets are safe and inviting. I want to create programs and infrastructure that get more people walking and on bikes and turn Burbank into a true multimodal city. And I'm committed to creating more convenient and efficient public transit that will help get people out of their cars and help make Burbank a greener city. Thanks.
Thank you. Hovanes.
Hey, everybody. I'm Hovanes Tonoyan, and I'm a local cybersecurity professional. I'm running to be Burbank Council member because I want to bring increased civic engagement into my community. I grew up in Burbank. I entered public service early on in my career, and I've traveled all throughout the country and the world, bringing data analytics to different economies, especially emerging markets such as cannabis and other public sectors. And I understand that Burbank is a hotspot for transit. We have a lot of different modalities, including train, public transit, and private vehicles. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity to connect with our community and the opportunity to debate fellow candidates with Streets for All. I believe that we all share and align on different progressive values, and I'm really excited to bring that all throughout the community for this upcoming election. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Konstantine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Konstantine Anthony. I use he, him pronouns. I am a current council member here for the city of Burbank, and I'm running for my re-election. The term is 4 years, but prior to that, prior to me being elected in 2020, I actually served on the Transportation Commission for the city for almost 4 years as well. We did a lot of great stuff back then, including the inception of the BRT, which obviously we're going to get into later today. I've been with that project from the beginning. I've watched it grow and change and had a lot of input on its design and its creation. There's a lot of other issues around Burbank that I have jumped in with both feet. Pedestrian safety, ADA access across our streets, the tree canopies, and just pleasantness of multimodal transit in Burbank is a very core component of all the work I've done the last 4, technically almost 8 years since serving with the city.
Thank you. And Mike.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Mike Van Gorder. I'm a professional housing policy analyst. Now, most folks in this room will agree that housing is the #1 priority in our city. I have a master's degree in urban planning, in community economic development and housing. And housing is the opposite side of the coin as transportation. So good housing policy is good transportation policy, and vice versa. I'm a public school parent. My daughter goes to McKinley. She's in the kindergarten program, Spanish language immersion. It's very exciting. I'm excited to bring a majority working class council that's going to make decisions for the benefit of working families. Because far too long, we've had too many decisions that prioritize things not changing, things not adapting. And because of that, we have one housing unit for every 6 jobs in the city. And everybody has to come here from somewhere, and commutes pile up. So we need to address that directly, intelligently, and with a long-range urban planning lens. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. On to our first question. I think I have the first one, and then I'm going to pass it over to Ellery. And it is about the BRT. So the NoHo to Pasadena BRT project would connect North Hollywood, the Burbank Media District, downtown Burbank, Glendale, Eagle Rock, and Pasadena. The question is very simple. Do you support the BRT? And do you support a dedicated lane for the bus through Burbank? And here we're going to start with Emma.
Right. So it's extremely dynamic when you think about this line in particular, because it's serving the communities, the employees, those that are underserved right now in our east to west regional transit. It's connecting to our airports, downtown Burbank. It's connecting so many different factors. But when we looked at all the alternatives that are posted through Metro, one of the things that stood out to me was that configuration of streets and a lot of impact on traffic and parking availability is a big issue with this implementation of this project. So I can't say that the alternatives were better. They were noted as CEQA superior in environmental friendliness. But I am supportive of helping mobilize our east to west underserved population. So I think it's going to be a great project.
Just to be clear, do you support a dedicated lane, or not sure?
It's uncertain whether a dedicated lane would be beneficial, but that's kind of the scope of the project. So at this point, yes.
Okay, thank you. John.
I support the Burbank BRT, and I do support a dedicated lane. I think the rapid part of BRT is essential. We want it to be fast. We want it to be alluring to all people. So I think a dedicated lane would help with that. I also don't see it having a negative impact to the businesses that are around there. I actually think having multiple bus stops will help. And from the information I've seen about Olive, 80% of people are driving through it, not stopping. So I think the configuration of where it's running through is smart and practical. And yeah, I'm excited to get it moving forward.
Thank you. Hovanes?
I definitely support Burbank BRT. I think it's long overdue. But I want to point out that Burbank in between is the smallest town. We have City of LA, we have Glendale and Pasadena, as well as the Metro Board, and they put a lot of pressure on Burbank. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to take more pro-Burbank advocacy and lobbying positions, making sure that we're sending our representatives to these different agencies and making sure that Burbank's positions are being heard. And as far as my position goes on the dedicated lane, I also support that. But I want to definitely take into account the community's concerns as far as increased congestion and the impact this would have on the use of private vehicles. So I definitely want to make sure that we're making our transportation system as future-friendly as possible, but we're taking the concerns of the community into account.
Thank you. Konstantine?
Yes, absolutely. I support the Burbank BRT. I've spent a lot of political capital actually getting this thing moved. One of the biggest issues that happened at the beginning was the dedicated lane was going to take away parking lanes. And we spoke to a lot of the businesses there. They wanted to make sure that we maintain the parking for their businesses. So the alternative was to lose a driving lane. So it would be one driving lane for traffic, one dedicated lane for the bus, and then one parking lane for the businesses. I was very proud of the fact that 2 years ago, even though a majority of the council at that time did not support a dedicated lane, myself and the current mayor, Nick Schultz, were able to put in language guaranteeing that we would get a dedicated lane if Metro showed ridership above 17,500 per day. So that's in the language. But on July 25th, if you go back, there is a Metro board meeting where I went down there and I publicly stated, personally, I am in favor of a dedicated lane regardless of the number of riderships.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, absolutely. We need a dedicated lane. The reverse of induced demand. I mean, a lot of people are concerned that like if we get rid of a lane, then it's going to slow down traffic. It's like, well, we do need to slow down traffic in some of these areas to protect people. There's not a lot of visual noise. People are driving very, very aggressively all up and down Olive. And so making it a slightly more difficult and slightly more crowded will attune drivers to the necessity of paying attention. And people can plan around going in other directions using other streets, other routes. But something that we absolutely need to do as well is signal prioritization, because we're not going to have rapid transit unless everything is lined up properly and the timing works out, that we can get all these buses through quickly and efficiently. I haven't heard anyone talk about that just yet. So I want to make sure that when we do get that going in the MOU with Metro, that we get signal prioritization as a major part of this.
Thank you. Eddy?
So Burbank has been very uncooperative with the bus rapid transit. It's a well-funded, organized opposition that drove the city council to deny the dedicated lanes. I organized a coalition earlier this year. We brought together Move LA and Streets for All and some other local groups. And we went to council when council was considering this. I brought over 60 people. We had more people commenting at council. We moved the needle a little bit. We need to go more. But the reality is the people of Burbank want this, and we need to get the city to change their position. City staff is still being an obstacle to this project. They are still opposing it, and we're waiting for city council to change that directive. That's why it's so important that I get elected to council, so I can be an advocate to make sure we get quality BRT that's truly connected, that's going to be involved with a station that connects to our Metrolink station on a rebuilt Olive Avenue bridge. This is a huge opportunity for us, and we need to take that opportunity today.
Thank you. Ellery, over to you.
Burbank 2035 is the city's general plan that aims to put Burbank on track to improve air quality, diversify land use, build public transportation, tackle noise pollution, and promote open public spaces. Do you think we are on track to complete Burbank's 2035 goals by 2035? John, we'll start with you.
Yes, I think we're on track. I think we have the right plans in place to make this a greener city and to make us more multimodal. But I think the hard part is just convincing people. So we have the plans in place, but we're just in a kind of holding pattern with some of the things that would really get us to that target. So for me, the important thing is just explaining to people and convincing people how beneficial all these programs would be, where there's still work that needs to be done there, but it's something I'm excited to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, my Zoom thing is, Hovanes, you're next.
Hey, I definitely think we're on track to complete the 2035 goals. And I definitely think one strength that Burbank has shown that is our legal compliance. We have to keep in mind that with the mobility element, the mobility plan, there's different compliance that we have to make with the state codes, making sure that there's a direct relation to these improvements to different land use elements, as well as addressing relevant issues when it comes to the different transportation services and the different issues concerning those. So I think we've been really good. We have a good kind of data infrastructure in place, and we've kind of organized the different efforts across the different districts and neighborhoods in Burbank. So I'm totally in agreement with our progress.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I kind of don't like the framing of this, just in the sense of I want to reject the potential for complacency by saying like, all right, we're on track, we're going to be okay. I want to go past that because I don't want to relax due to the pressing challenge of climate change. We're seeing what's going on, 40 miles east of here. Like we're choking on ash raining down from the sky. It's because we had temperatures of over 105 degrees for almost an entire week in a row. I look forward to coordinating every single year, every possible chance we get to ensure that we not only meet these goals, but exceed them in terms of time. There's no reason that we need to be very careful and long and slow and plodding. It's not good enough. Our children deserve better. We need to make sure that we prioritize this, tied into the Burbank Green New Deal, accelerate the goals of the Burbank Green New Deal, and then treat it like we have to catch up, because we absolutely do.
Thank you, Konstantine. I'm sorry I skipped you by accident. If you'd like to go now.
That's okay. It happens all the time. I actually, I want to thank everybody for having confidence in the city by reaching its goals. I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, and my other council members are probably going to be mad at me for saying this, but we're not on track. We were. Inflation, insurance rates, the costs of materials, it has put a damper on our ability to effectively build the infrastructure and get staff time to do all of this stuff. I'm not saying we haven't fallen too far behind, but we are going to have to pick up the pace if we want to meet these goals. Burbank 2035 was actually originally designed in 2013, and it was updated a couple times after that. So it's a living document. I think we can get back on track. It's going to take some heavy lifting, though, because things have changed. I want to meet that goal. I think there's a desire in the city to do that, not just from the electeds, but from staff as well. So I'm committed to getting there.
Thank you. Eddy.
Yes, thank you. We are 100% not on track. As you know, I've been looking at the work we do, and the reality is, Burbank is a professionally run city, and everyone reports to our city manager, and really from the city manager down. I don't believe that there is the enthusiasm and the buy-in that we need from every level of government to actually reach these goals. And that requires using some imagination and not just checking off boxes that might be on a piece of paper, but really looking at things like building infrastructure. We own our own utility, but we don't have a charging infrastructure that's capable of charging commercial vehicles, for instance. So there's a lot of work to be done right now. That Burbank 2035 is just words on a paper, and until we have a city council that really expressly directs staff that this is a priority for our city, it's just not going to get done. They're going to drag their feet as they've done for years, and we need to really change that whole culture.
Thank you so much. And finally, Emma.
So the goals of our 2035 mobility plan, involves kind of complete streets. And so that involves the design, the planning, the operating, and then the maintenance of it. And that requires a lot of manpower, both on city's end and in community engagement. I think we are currently not on track to reach our goals. We've made some, great movements towards it, but we need to be more proactive instead of reactive when it comes to mobility. There's so many things that need to happen, so many infrastructure changes, capital improvement projects, and how we're going about funding these projects also needs to be more rigorous. That involves, private partnerships, procuring government grants that are necessarily not on our radar, allocating our budget towards these projects so that we can reach our goals. So much to be done.
Thank you. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you. Our next question. So the first bicycle master plan in Burbank was in 1976. And despite planning so many years ago, biking still makes up a small fraction of trips in Burbank, under 2%. Burbank's current bicycle master plan remains largely unrealized, leaving large gaps in infrastructure on major city arteries, or the existing infrastructure doesn't always make people 8 to 80 feel safe. The question, would you prioritize the bicycle master plan, including finding funds to support it? And if you would, how would you handle pushback from those that oppose giving up car space to make room for things like bike lanes? And with this one, we'll start with Hovanes.
I definitely prioritize the bicycle master plan, and I'm kind of a fundraiser and very entrepreneurial. For the different stakeholders that be affected by this, if they're going to see their cost increase or any kind of penalties that might increase, I'd be kind of like a salesperson. I'd go out throughout the different community, look at different investors, different nonprofits that might be interested in providing increased services for them. And for any opponents to different bicycle plans, I try to do different concessions or different incentives, try to see if there's any way that we can offset the impacts that are going to be made on them, so that they can also be stakeholders that buy into this and make sure that we're achieving consensus with everybody.
Thank you. Konstantine?
So the bicycle master plan still has three major missing connectors in Burbank, and then a number of all smaller connections that are not just, fit into the network. You can't bike through a lane to another lane. You have to cross traffic. You've got to get on the sidewalk. So we're actively trying to fix those three major ones and all of the little small connectors. But at the end of the day, a lot of this bicycle infrastructure was built years ago before we knew any real good safety infrastructure for bikes. So, some places we say, oh, we've checked off the box because there's a bike lane there. And I'm like, okay, I would never ride in that area. And I saw it firsthand. I was on the Transportation Commission on April 17th, 2018. Lenny Trin, who was one of our postal workers in the city, there was a ghost bike there on Alameda. After he passed away, he got doored and did not survive. And it's a real issue.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, the city prides itself on a balanced budget every single year. Yet more than once, when something comes up, it's like, hey, we just happened to find an extra $20 to $90 million. There's money in the budget. It's just we need to have a long look at it and find things that we're willing to move around. In terms of pushback from people giving up car space, you push safety. You absolutely push safety, because the more protected bike lanes, not sharrows, just painting a street doesn't make anybody more safe. And this is especially prescient for me because my wife bikes to WB Studios on Alameda with all those ghost bikes, as you're talking about. But we need protected bike lanes. And we say the more stuff that you put in the streets that's not cars, that slows everyone down, makes it much more safe, makes people pay attention. It's going to cut down on the drag racing. I was at Alameda today and I heard people complaining, people just drag race. Putting more stuff in there will stop drag racing.
Thank you. Eddy?
If we built our freeways the way we build our bike paths, we would have built 1 mile of the 101 freeway, stopped, and asked everyone what they thought about it. And of course, everyone would say, it's useless, it disrupted our neighborhood, it's noisy, there's no point, just stop it. And that's the real problem. Until we complete a real bike network, people aren't going to ride bikes, it's not safe. And the reality is we built the freeways, we built the complete system, and hey, people liked it. And we have to use that same philosophy with our bike network. The 100% priority is to have a complete safe bike network. 60% of people in America do not ride bicycles because they're afraid they're going to get killed. And that is a very realistic and true observation, and we need to change that. And we have it in our power. We have great sections of good path. We need to complete the network and make it available to everyone, and then ask the question, what do you think about it? Because then they're going to say, we love it.
Emma?
I would definitely prioritize the bicycle master plan. The future I envision for Burbank is one where we're a stronger community, and I think bikeways and connectivity and allowing people in our community to access different points is so important to reach that goal. It's also super important for reducing emissions, reducing traffic, anticipation of increased population density so that more people are able to get around. It cut costs, and yeah, it fosters definitely a stronger community. So finding funds for that would be definitely a priority of mine. And I think when you think about the negative impacts of including bike lanes, you just have to go back to what bike lanes will do for us, right? So reducing emissions and all those other listed points that I mentioned previously. So very much important to take all those into account.
John?
Yeah, I would prioritize the bike master plan as well for the aforementioned reasons of just safer for the community and better for the environment. I don't want to be Pollyannish either, but I like the city's current plan too, that all new bike lanes will be level 4. I like the plan to make Verdugo a level 4 bike lane. And the thing I would most like to see is the Chandler bike path get connected with the Burbank Channel path. But I think we're doing a good job and the plans in place are good. We just need to be more active in getting them done.
Thank you. Ellery, over to you.
So as John mentioned, Burbank is home to the Chandler Boulevard Bike Path, a 2.8-mile bikeway that goes from Burbank to North Hollywood. It features separate bicycle and pedestrian lanes, sculptures, murals, pleasant landscaping, and views of the Verdugo Mountains. Will you commit to expanding the Chandler Bike Path eastward into downtown Burbank? And can you identify other areas in Burbank that would benefit from a similar bike path? We'll start with Konstantine.
Yes. Okay. So this is awesome. I love the Chandler bike path. The way it's built, though, you can only get on and off if you're in a wheelchair at the ends of the path. So one of the discussions I've been having with our Burbank Advisory Council on Disabilities is to put in new curb cuts along the path to let folks who have not just wheelchairs, but people on strollers, people who have their bike and can't jump the curb, like smaller children, to get those curb cuts in so that it can be accessed at any point. Second to that, I think 6th Street up in the hillside is perfect for an expanded bike lane. This is a very well-used street by folks commuting within the city. Unlike, say, Kenneth or Bel Air or Glen Oaks, the major street, where people are just passing through. So my goal is to get 6th Street along the hillside expanded to this bike lane.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, I would commit to expanding the bike path because I want bikes to lead to trains to our metro stations. So getting them all the way to downtown Burbank into the metro station would be absolutely ideal. I'd like to see a similar bike path on Alameda. Like I said earlier, it's pretty often used. It is underserved with bike infrastructure. We can connect that. We can connect Alameda all going back and forth there. We need along Victory too to get down to Griffith Park. Because people want to ride to Griffith Park. It's a major bicycling attraction. There's miles and miles and miles of space that you can bike up there, but no protected way to get to it. And a lot of very wide streets along the way on Victory and Riverside. So that would be what I would imagine in the southeast area. Absolutely Alameda and absolutely Victory.
Thank you very much. Eddy.
So I appreciate what Konstantine said about the lack of access to the Chandler bike path, because in reality, I call it the Chandler Freeway because it's hard to get off and on of it, and there are no benches, there's no park facilities. It's really an underdeveloped asset in our community, and I think again it's a kind of very narrow silo thinking philosophy that this is an asset for the entire community. It's a bike path, it's a walking path, and it could be a picnic area if we actually put some facilities there. So that's number one. Number two, of course, we need to connect it. You know, the hillside neighborhood of Burbank is completely disconnected from the rest of the city. To get to the rest of the city, you risk your life going over one of our narrow bridges or jumping the railroad tracks, and it's just absurd. So that the number one thing is we need to connect all corners of our city, and clearly the Chandler bike path should be the backbone of that, but we need to actually extend it to all the different corners and let everyone have a safe way to use all of our bike paths.
Thank you very much, Eddy. Emma.
I would very much like to commit to expanding our Chandler bike path. I'm a frequent user of it, both running, skating, walking my dog. So frequent user, but I've definitely seen the issues with, like Konstantine Anthony pointed out, the curb cuts for accessibility, and also just expanding it into our downtown districts or different hubs would be, I think, beneficial for our community. In terms of areas I've identified, I haven't identified anything that would be where we could put a similar bike path, but looking at the general plans, the level of service scores that we have for our mobility and our traffic congestion, the city has noted in our general plan that it has not taken into account walking and bicycles in this kind of this score that they place on congestion. So I would push for a lot of bike and walk auditing so that we can get a little bit better of an idea about what would be most useful for our community members.
Thank you, Emma. John.
Yeah, I would also support the expansion of the Chandler bike path. I think that, we want to get people connected from their parks to their homes to their businesses. In terms of other places where I could see a bike path going, I think having a bike path or bridge rather to Griffith Park would be essential. Then also along Whitnall Highway connecting Johnny Carson to Chandler, I think could also be helpful. But we want the whole city to be a grid where people can bike to transportation and to their jobs and just make it more easy for them to get around.
Thank you. And finally, Hovanes.
I definitely commit to expanding the Chandler bike path. I think that's a jewel of Burbank. And even historically, that was a historical kind of pathway for a tram and other pedestrian-friendly transportation corridors. And as far as other areas that I'd want to expand similar bike paths, I think the corridor around Sun Valley, they have kind of like a water channel there, would be a great spot. The area around the airport, if we can make really good protected lanes, I think it'd be really good kind of balance the traffic, as well as the area around Toluca Lake. Really good area for commercial use and just socializing and shopping. And especially with our proximity to the city of Glendale and the city of LA, if they're going to be taking bike-friendly approaches, then we want to make sure that our corridors are connected to theirs to make sure that all transit is seamless, even if it's through bike lanes.
Thank you. Back to you, Michael.
Measure HLA was a City of Los Angeles measure that passed this past March with nearly 2/3 of the vote and the primaries. It requires the City of Los Angeles to implement its own already adopted mobility plan anytime it does routine street maintenance. This not only saves lives by making the streets more multimodal over time, but it also saves money. It costs less to implement, for example, a bike lane or a crosswalk during routine street repaving than going back later and doing the work again. The question is, would you support adopting an HLA-style ordinance in the city of Burbank, mandating the city implement its complete streets and bicycle master plan anytime it does routine street maintenance? And we'll start with Mike.
Yeah, Jordan, yeah, absolutely. This one's easy. Efficiency is such an important part of keeping costs down, and having that long range lens, knowing going into we're going to improve this street, but also it will serve several different purposes at once and serve multiple different needs at once. Absolutely. It's a slam dunk.
Thank you. Eddy?
So I think Burbank's in a unique position because we are a small city, and then we have the opportunity to really collaborate, citizens, elected officials, and city staff. And the reality is our city staff just hasn't been on board. And what I would be worried about is that an ordinance like that would be basically the unintended consequences of that really might be our city staff doing demonstration projects versus actual real projects that might actually serve to set us back. In other words, just repainting the street without putting safe barricades will be one example, or rechanging routes and not adding landscaping. So I think it's such a bigger issue, and I would rather see our city staff be directed by council to do this. I don't think we need an ordinance. I think we just need clear direction to city staff that this is what the community wants and that they need to be on top of this.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Emma?
I definitely would support the adoption of a style of this ordinance, just because I think it would be impactful in making movements towards actually implementing our mobility plan. And as some have said prior, I think retrofitting is going to be more expensive. So if we can kind of take into account mobility plans and take action when it comes to our attention, when there's street pavings or whatnot, maintenance, I think it would be the most beneficial to do so when the project comes first into our attention, rather than trying to redo things later on.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I mean, this passed by a wide margin in March, and I think it did for good reason. Like we've just been talking about how great our plans are, and we need to put action to words, and I think this does that. It makes it mandatory. It'll make it happen. So things like bump outs and safer curbs and new bike lanes, this will make those things a reality. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Hovanes?
I'd support adopting this kind of ordinance in Burbank, especially because if we were already making these commitments for our complete streets and for our bicycle master plans, then we want to be able to put some teeth into enforcing this. So if we're going to be using street repavement as a kind of like a trigger point, I think that'll be a good opportunity and a good kind of pilot program to be able to see how are we going to put this ordinance into action, what kind of cases and what kind of parties are going to be coming before the city for this. And ultimately, we want to be able to provide direction to the city manager and the city attorney as well to make sure that there's uniformity as far as enforcement and interpretation goes.
Thank you. Konstantine?
So in 2022, I actually went and collected signatures for Measure HLA. I fully supported that in Los Angeles, in our neighboring city. I think the only issue with bringing it to Burbank was the size of LA really allows for the trigger mechanism, the eighth of a mile, to get adopted easily because they have such long and big streets. I think I'd like to see the mechanism a little different. I'd like to implement it here, but I would change it to simply block by block. If we did a block, because some of the blocks in Burbank are actually shorter than an eighth of a mile. So I think we can get a little bit of a different qualifier. And we don't have to go to the ballot. We'll just get the city to pass it as an ordinance, which they should have done right when you qualified for the ballot. I don't know why they wasted all that time going to March and paying for an election. But, there's always going to be that resistance. So I'd be in favor of passing it by ordinance right through the city council.
Thank you. Ellery, over to you.
Minimum parking requirements required for new commercial and residential development create car-dependent communities, increase the cost of housing, and make affordable housing projects financially unfeasible to develop. Would you support eliminating parking minimums throughout Burbank, especially for development within a half mile of frequent transit service? Eddy, we'll start with you.
So I like to think of myself as not an ideologue. And so when you say the word eliminating, that feels like it's a little bit too much. I think we need to reduce and minimize the mandates that we have, because the reality is building buildings without any parking could be detrimental to the neighborhood. So we have to be conscious of that. But I think that our minimums are definitely our current parking minimums are definitely way too high, and that we should also give property owners and business owners more leeway in deciding how they want to use their parking. So for instance, if a business wants to turn their parking lot into outdoor dining or some other business usage, there needs to be a much better way to do that and not be tied in by strict numbers. So I 100% support reducing it because I believe in the goal of helping people get off of that. And I think it helps us build more housing if we can reduce the number of parking spaces necessary.
Thank you. Emma.
Yeah, so actually recently Governor Newsom signed into law the Assembly Bill 2097, which basically no longer requires a preset minimum number of parking spaces, nearby 1/2 mile of major transit stops. And I think being in line with California as a state is really important for Burbank to push too. So I would definitely be in favor of it. I think, as Ellery was saying, parking minimums kind of reduce the opportunity to make money when developers are making projects for affordable housing. And it also kind of makes car-centric transportation kind of the mode of travel when you have these minimum parking spaces. So I would definitely be in favor of the elimination of parking minimums. Yes.
Thank you very much. John.
Yeah, I'm against I'm sorry, I would support eliminating parking minimums just because space is at such a premium. We're trying to get away from cars. Having more parking spaces is making us more car reliant. And we need the space for housing. That is the #1 issue in this upcoming election. And I just don't see the benefit of having these gigantic parking structures when perhaps that land could go to affordable housing or other uses that could bring down the overall cost of living in Burbank.
Thank you very much. Hovanes.
I definitely support eliminating parking minimums, establishing parking maximums. And I think the free market speaks for itself over here. Trying to implement a pay for what you use model would empower the businesses, would empower transit users. And even though the reality is that cars are a bit of a lifeblood for Burbank as far as transportation goes, we have to start making the evolution and all the changes now. And we need to put that kind of teeth into the law, like I mentioned in previous questions. And this wouldn't be any exception to that. So definitely, I support parking, eliminating the minimums.
Thank you. Konstantine.
So when a city puts out their zoning and their development plans for folks to come in and build, they don't put minimums on number of rooms or number of bathrooms. We do have a minimum on stairwells. That's a whole nother issue entirely. But it seems like parking is the one exemption where we need to tell you, hey, this is how many cars you're going to get coming in and out of your business. So I believe that the kind of regulation we should have at the city level is just on safety. It's on how it connects with the rest of the city when we're building a community. We should not be putting any type of minimum parking requirements on construction, because the folks coming in, the developers, they know what pencils out. They know what they need for their space. And we should create more streamlined by right construction without forcing them to build parking that in the future won't be necessary.
Thank you. Mike.
Yes, full elimination. Because a parking minimum is something that says this is a standard you must meet to create this housing. And my priority is infill development along our major commercial corridors where street parking already exists. And you got to remember, we need to build housing for everybody. And that includes people who do not want to own cars. Maybe they're seniors. Maybe they choose public transportation. I used to drive for Uber and Lyft like 15 years ago, it seems at this point. But there were people that did not want to own cars. This city needs to work for them too. And if we're going to incentivize our mass transit, if we're going to make the BRT work, then we need to make sure that we are incentivizing a smaller, cheaper development that is targeted at working class families or seniors or people who do not choose to have that kind of resource. The high cost of free parking. Donald Shoup. I took his class in UCLA. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, has read that book.
Thank you very much. Back to Michael.
It wouldn't be a Streets for All debate if someone didn't invoke Donald Shoup. All right. To our last curated question. Bike parking throughout the city is sporadic, and safe bike parking is key to encouraging more trips to be taken using a bicycle. So the question is, would you commit to providing bike parking at city facilities and parks and mandating them for new commercial development? And would you support the city adding secure bike parking on residential streets, such as community bike sheds? We're going to start with Emma.
So committing to requiring facilities and parks to have, and new commercial development to have bikes might not be the best way to look at things. Actually, Burbank launched a free bike program recently where businesses have the opportunity to have racks installed free of cost nearby the right of way. So that itself kind of fosters a more bike friendly environment. But I would definitely push for more installation, not necessarily a mandate, but we definitely need to have that opportunity for those that are riding bikes to be able to park their bikes safely. I would definitely support city adding though secure bike parking on residential streets and like a community bike shed, just because there are individuals living in smaller areas and they're confined to space where they require storage of safekeeping of their bikes.
Thank you. John?
I would commit to providing bike parking at city facilities and parks, making it mandated for new commercial developments. I don't know if that's the correct move. I think incentivizing them or creating some sort of, free program or tax incentive for it would probably be a more effective strategy. But I'm totally committed to secure bike parking on residential streets and bike sheds as well.
Thank you. Hovanes?
I'm all for committing to providing bike parking at city facilities and parks, especially because I think, especially those locations are pretty well trafficked, and they're usually in more kind of safer areas. I would not be in support of mandates for new commercial development only because commercial development can pop out at any part of the city, and they might not always be the best or most trafficked for bike use. As far as secure bike parking goes on residential streets, I support maybe a pilot project in a few areas. It would be kind of like a dense area where there's a lot of bike use, maybe near the apartments, not so much the single family homes, especially because I think those are usually more of a kind of community-oriented corners of Burbank, and they'd be good to be able to try those projects out.
Thank you. Konstantine?
So yeah, Emma sort of stole my point there that yes, we at the city just launched a new free bike rack program for commercial businesses. We're hoping that takes off, but absolutely I'm pushing to get more of these bike racks at obviously city facilities and parks. That's easy for us to do, that the city council can do that with the wave of their wand. I'll be pushing for that as we roll out more of these bike racks. Mandating them for new commercial development, I'd actually like to change that. I have no problem requiring it for commercial development if it meets a certain threshold. If there's a certain size or certain customer base, absolutely you should start to scale 1, 2, 3, 4, however many loops or racks you need. But I would also like to go retroactive. I think there are definitely some commercial corridors in the city that are lacking in bike racks, and we need to put those in there. Community bike sheds is interesting. We don't really have a bike theft problem in Burbank, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Mike?
Yes, absolutely. Any public-facing space needs to have bike facilities if we want to encourage people to use their bikes to get there. I do like the more nuanced approach of like, is this commercial facility rather, is there going to be enough of a potential ridership to these areas to justify these kinds of things? But bike parking is cheap. It is not space hungry. It's not really all that significant, and it can be helpful. I'm sorry, I keep getting spam calls, I guess I'm trying to answer these questions here. Yeah, we definitely want to make it easy to get around the city and to have public facilities but public parking facilities, because too often I'm locking my bike to my wife's bike and then just sort of letting it flop to the ground. That's not really security, and you can't shop that way. So yes, please.
Eddy?
So when you talk about adding, here's the problem. There's a covered, protected bike facility right by our city services building. But if you go in there with your bike, you'll discover they put a dumpster in there as well. And it's really a dumpster. It's a urinal. It is the most disgusting place you could be. We also have a bike corral, one bike corral that's been installed in front of Tony's Darts Away. But did you know there are a bunch more of those sitting in our public service yard? So this is, again, a culture question. It's not just about mandating something. It's about city staff being smart about it and respecting bikers as regular commuters. When I challenge our city staff about the urinal that they use for the dumpster storage area that where the bikes are, I said, and they ride their bikes to work. I said, do you use that? And they said, oh, of course not. We just bring our bikes up to the office. So this is the issue. It's not about, we need to start by making the facilities we have work and installing the rest of those bike corrals, because we can turn parking into bike spaces.
Thank you. All right. We have a lot of audience questions. We'll get to as many as we can. And John, we're going to start with you on this one. So this is a question from Eric. He asks, what other Los Angeles County city or cities do you think is generally getting mass transportation and active transportation right? And if there's none in LA County, what city might you admire that's getting massive public transportation and active transportation right? So we'll start with you, John.
I guess so. This isn't in LA, but I've always admired the way San Luis Obispo did travel throughout their town. Like they have the trolleys, and they've created a community around their public transit where it's like a celebrated thing that brings outsiders into it. I think talking about like the bike stick about bikes more, like the bike share stations that you see in North Hollywood are very effective and something that could be cool if we replicated it here in Burbank. And then beyond that, who do I think is doing a really good job? I mean, North Hollywood to me does a very good job with the Metrolink, with the bike share stations. There's someone who has good access for public transit that the community takes advantage of.
Hovanes?
I think Culver City is a really good model. I've ridden a bike all throughout Culver City, and it's kind of right in the middle of different areas of Los Angeles. Santa Monica's a big one, the West Side, and then the beach community is near it. So I think that its location helps it a lot, but also they have the culture, they have kind of like the legal mindset for it, and they have the political appetite. They're very pedestrian minded, pretty similar to Burbank, but I think they've been a little bit more forward thinking when it comes to it. So I'd want to take a lot of inspiration from them.
Konstantine?
So Culver City to me is about the same size, population, density, and style of government as Burbank, and they have been doing some great work with their bike lanes. They've been working on it for a few years. They're a couple years ahead of us, and I really would like to get to where they're at. Their level of infrastructure and green space around their bike lanes is it's commendable. It's really commendable.
Culver City is popular tonight. Mike?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to jump on that. Yes, also Culver City. I actually worked at UCLA on one of the neighborhood plan proposals that would have addressed the worst intersection there. It's like a five-way intersection. I'll also say that's it's a little bit cheating because it's amazing, but Montreal has an amazing system. They got the bike shares all over the place. They have these very long scenic paths. Everything is connected. It's really remarkable. But yeah, like I used to ride my bike from here to UCLA, and sometimes I'd get a little spicy. I would extend that out either to the coast or to Culver. But yeah, Culver had the best resources, and it felt the safest, despite a few pockets that were at that point not working.
You'd think by now I would really get that mute button right. Sorry, Eddy.
Well, I would say Seattle, Washington. They are a city that has done an exemplary job of not just creating protected bike paths, but including amenities such as special signals for the bike paths. And it's not just the bike paths. I mean, you can, if you fly into Seattle, you can just get on the light rail, right? You can walk out of the terminal and just about 100 yards into light rail, which gets you right into the city. So they've taken it seriously. They looked at it as a complete network, and they've really, I was up there this past December and had the most amazing experience traveling around that city on bicycles. So that should be a shining example really for Burbank of what's possible. And, and the reason that, I looked into how did that happen? Well, they had a mayor and they call him the bicycle mayor. So the reality is, once again, we're looking at city council needs to direct staff. We need to set the example on the dais that this is an important issue, and that's possible.
Emma?
I think Burbank is really unique. It's a built-out city, and we do have some cities that are similarly situated. Personally, I have experience with the Santa Monica Big Blue Bus transit service, and I think they've done a great job in terms of creating walkable spaces and in ease of access to students, to those with required accommodation. So definitely Santa Monica. I also was in Irvine for a little while, and I really appreciated their bike network. I could take my bike from my apartment all the way to Newport Beach. So I think those two cities. And then in terms of which city is like leading the modernization of transportation, I think looking outwards into different countries. Sweden is my home, and I think looking at their technologies and the introduction of their transportation system would be very valuable.
All right. Our next question is about the bus. How do you think we can improve local city transit, the Burbank bus, to better integrate into LA Metro and other regional systems? And how could we improve it in general? We'll start with Hovanes.
I definitely think some marketing outreach would be really important. Physical outreach, digital outreach, trying to make sure that you're targeting the demographics and the customers that are going to be using these transportation services in these communities. And I think Burbank's really good at that. We do a lot of outreach and kind of community forums for our community. We just want to make sure that we're matching that enthusiasm with the services and the actual investments that we're providing. And I think the city of LA, for example, they kind of have a little bit more of the investment and the political backing. So that's something that we can kind of work and increase more partnerships with them to help us.
Konstantine?
So the city council just approved letting middle schoolers and high schoolers free on the bus. We agendized moving forward with getting all under 18-year-olds free on the bus. I want to take that one step further and completely remove the fare box. I think having even any fare box return slows people down from either getting on the bus and creates a hesitation from taking it. I firmly believe that public transit, especially at the local level, needs to be completely free at point of service. We don't charge people to use the road. Why do we charge people to use the bus? So for me, investing in the bus infrastructure and making it free to use is going to increase ridership, and it's going to get our populace comfortable. It's going to get more people on the buses, which as a byproduct actually creates safer buses when there's more people on there.
Mike?
We need a north-south circulator. We need a green line that goes north and south. North along Hollywood Way to the airport, east along over to Buena Vista on Victory, south to Alameda, and then west back over to Hollywood. 2 buses going in opposite directions, circulating our ridership, because that will turn the airport into a multimodal hub. We need to have Metro extend we need to extend our red line to the airport. You know, it's well past time that it is a multimodal hub. You know, we got the pending high speed rail coming in there. There are 3 kinds of trains, or there'd be 2 kinds of trains connections. We need to make sure that we're getting the bus connection in there as well, so that anybody from anywhere can access that airport or those train systems or those bike paths that we're talking about now. But yeah, north-south circulator, absolutely.
Eddy?
So the Burbank bus is only about 20 years old. It was envisioned as a last mile connection for people going to their offices. And it still runs on that same system in the sense of it's a Monday through Friday service. It does not run on weekends. It's really completely misguided. And on the Transportation Commission, we've been really trying to push our transportation staff to start thinking a little more creatively and a little more smarter about how we use our resources. So there's 2 things we should do with the Burbank bus. One is, as Mike was mentioning, we should have circulars. We should be looking inward, connecting with the Metro and connecting people to their homes. If the Hillside, for instance, has no bus service at all. So we need to start looking at that, smaller vehicles. So that's number 1. So we need to look internally, and then we also need to really partner with Metro to make sure we're really not duplicating service, but supporting the efforts that Metro's making, and really make sure Burbank becomes that final missing ingredient, the umami in our transit system.
Emma?
So the Burbank bus we currently have 2 fixed routes, and then we have smaller buses that can go and pick up the individuals that are in need, accommodating those of both age and with special needs. But one of the problems I see is that with this fixed route, it kind of eliminates the need, or not the need, but it eliminates the drive to use bus system, because I think if we are pushing towards the electrification of our transportation fleets, we should also be pushing towards looking at how our current fleet is being utilized. Ridership is extremely low right now. I think it's costing somewhere around $50, $60 for every rider that rides the bus to the city at that cost. So perhaps minimizing the size of the fleet and then also changing it to electrification would assist the Burbank bus program.
John.
Yeah, I think Burbank is largely isolated from Metro in general, and we need to get connected in many ways, not just buses. Although with the buses, like it's great that the students get to ride for free on the Burbank buses, but I think we need to push the school districts to get integrated with Metro bus. I think another thing we could do is get Metro bike connected with us. I think the tap cards that we're using are great and make it really easy for people to get on there. So making sure those are advertised and known and that people are using them. And then I think the new BRT stations that they're talking about will help a ton because it'll make it more appealing to people. And then lastly, I think bringing in something like Circuit that would, make it better for the environment and not be such an energy drain would be good for everyone involved.
All right, we're gonna see if we can get to 3 more questions before closing statements. The next one, electric cars have received big incentives, and yet electric cars do nothing for heat island, excessive payments, stormwater runoff, high-speed near-miss streets, so unsafe streets. In other cities, for example, in Denver, they have an e-bike incentive program that is so popular that it sells out within 60 seconds of releasing new vouchers. And what it does is it helps people that live in Denver afford an electric bike, which is a much more practical solution for many people at a much lower cost. So the question is, how would you incentivize e-bikes in Burbank? And would you perhaps favor the city subsidizing e-bikes for Burbank residents to encourage them to use them? And we'll start with Konstantine.
So Denver limits how much or how many people get the rebates month after month. I believe they do that so that the same individuals aren't collecting the rebates over and over again. I'm comfortable with creating some sort of rebate program for e-bikes. We obviously started a lot of these conversations today with bike infrastructure. So once we build that kind of infrastructure, I think the e-bikes are going to come. There was a little bit of a talk about getting e-scooters in the city. I don't know why they didn't become more popular. I think they're just not as safe and easy to use as people thought they were. So I'm very much interested in going back to e-bikes, getting people to purchase them. But at the same time, we mentioned earlier the Metro bike system, getting rentals. So rebates are great. We do a lot of rebates through Burbank Water and Power for a number of other tools and utilities to go to electric. I think bikes is the next thing.
Mike?
Yeah, I really want to prioritize bike share stations over electric bikes as much as possible. But I'll also say I've been the beneficiary of one of these kinds of programs because at UCLA, rather than get a parking pass, the school paid for bikes for students if we agreed not to have a parking pass. So that saved them the money of having to improve their parking facilities. It's a bit of a chess move, but it totally works out. Like the demand of the parking was not nearly as high because they were providing bicycles to folks. And I like that as a subsidy as opposed to just, buying an entire bike for some folks. But then again, also, it's entirely possible that we could income target and make sure that people who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to get this kind of a tool to be able to use it every day.
Thank you. Eddy?
So I was a small business owner, and the reality of being a small business owner is you have to make payroll every week, and it's no different with our city government. If we have the money to give rebates, I think that money should be going to improving our bike paths, because if we're throwing more people on the street, it's like lighting a match. We're going to put more people in danger. And the priority is to make biking safe here in Burbank. And that should be our #1 priority, because when it is safe, then people will want to buy bikes. And again, we limit, the reality is resources are limited. We have to be level-headed. It's easy to promise all kinds of gifts and offers to people, but that's not necessarily realistic. And it's also not necessarily correct, because again, Our cities, our streets are not safe. If we have that money, I would like to see that money go directly, immediately, right now to improving that infrastructure to make it safe for everyone to be able to ride.
Emma.
Yeah, so the bike master plan is very much incomplete at this stage. So I think incentivizing at this point the use of electrical bikes would maybe be in a, as you would say it, putting the cart before the horse. Once we have that infrastructure in place, I think I would have no problem in creating rebates to incentivize the purchase and use of electric bikes, because I think it is so important that we move towards electrification and alternative modes of transportation aside from vehicle use. And along with that, I don't see how we've kind of looked at the safety concerns of electric bikes now that we don't have the infrastructure. So definitely at a later stage. But I would be very interested in looking at private public partnerships and in order to have a city program where we can provide electric bikes once we have the infrastructure in place.
John?
Yeah, e-bike prices are getting pretty exorbitant, but I'm not sure I'd be in favor of subsidizing some kind of rebate or incentive. I think as we build up the infrastructure, if we get more repair stops and if the bike paths get more accessible and safer, then e-bike use will go up as a result of that. But I think it's kind of, I would go at it from the other side and just work on the infrastructure rather than working on incentivizing people to get more e-bikes.
Thank you. Hovanes.
I would stray away from providing any incentives at the government level. I think the free market can also speak for itself here. And especially because with e-bikes, we also need different regulations in place and take safety concerns into account. If there's any incentives that the city would provide, I'd rather it come in the form of awareness campaigns, making sure folks know the differences between traditional bikes and electric bikes and, different areas that we still need to do a little bit more research on. So I definitely support our local businesses if they want to become e-bike providers and if they want to kind of slip into the shoes of that. But as far as the city goes, I'd want to stay on the safe side.
Okay, we're going to do one more question, but if we could stay under 1 minute for this each, maybe 30 seconds, we could actually get to two. Recently, there was a very contentious city council meeting in Glendale regarding their bicycle transportation plan. There were many citizens concerned with bike plans making the streets less safe and look uglier. In a world that is often at risk becoming polarized over many different subjects, how would you work to make bike infrastructure an issue without controversy, or perhaps with less controversy? Mike, we'll start with you.
I mean, that's always going to be a challenge because people will see it as a direct threat to a thing they're already comfortable with. But again, if you're talking about comfort, you can counter comfort with a dialogue about safety. We can get into induced demand versus its opposite effect. But I mean, we want to prioritize keeping young people, keeping children on bicycles, keeping grown-ups on bicycles safe. There was a spate of, as soon as I got my master's degree in urban planning, there were 3 urban planners that were killed on bicycles within the space of a single week in LA. So, I mean, we want to make sure that we are slowing down the places where people are operating unsafely. And we can do that by creating visual noise and providing resources to people who do not want to use cars or who maybe would be incentivized to get out.
Thank you. Eddy.
So I'll go back to my freeway analogy. We built the complete system and the freeways immediately filled up. It's the same thing with a bike path. We need to complete the network. And I firmly believe that if we had a safe, complete bicycle network in Burbank, it would just fill up. And that needs to be our goal. We need to do the stuff that seems so obvious, at least to me, and I think to many people in Burbank. And the longer that we wait, so that needs to be the focus of all this. We need to provide a real amenity for our city, and bicycling will blossom.
Emma?
Yeah, so I think when we are faced with divisiveness, one thing that's super important is to step back and ask everyone, what is the issue we're trying to solve with this solution that is causing such divide? There is a solution for everything that is mutually beneficial to all. I think if we make sure that we're taking in community engagement, getting more involved so that we have the opinions of everybody kind of taken into account. There's a way that we can keep Burbank's traditional kind of neighborhood character by also increasing our bikeability with, in anticipation of our increased population density.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I don't want to get too sentimental, but I mean, I think first of all, it's our job to endure that anger. So if people are upset, we'll have to wear that for a short time. And then, we can be available, we can listen to them. And then I think the thing that we can really tell people is like, this could be our legacy. Like we want to make forward thinking changes, and people often don't like change, but I think they also want to say that they were a part of something good. And I think we can inspire them to buy into this if we can be persuasive enough.
Hovanes?
Oh, I think we just have to have kind of an open mind and open door policy. I think there's a lot of fringe groups that like to sensationalize and politicize all kinds of different issues. And I don't know why they'd want to target bike infrastructure and pro-bike policies, but we definitely want to make sure that we keep a steady kind of ground. If anyone tries to come at pro-bike policies, we want to be able to make sure we have our position backed up. But at the same time, we don't want to take any kind of predetermined outlook on anything. So I think it's just a matter of quelling chaos, quelling kind of the controversies, making sure all sides are heard, and that we're able to come to an outcome that everyone can agree with.
Konstantine?
So on March 5th, there were 2 school board seats up in Glendale. Both of those seats had far-right anti-LGBTQ candidates running. I personally went out there and I canvassed for the opposing candidates. We got Telly C. and Anita Farid elected. 6 weeks later, one of the council members who had endorsed both of those anti-LGBTQ candidates was up for his turn in the rotational method of Glendale mayor. I was there at that meeting and they blocked him from becoming mayor, as they rightly should, because of statements he made publicly. The biking vote, the bike lanes and the bike infrastructure was a proxy war in this cultural, ideological fight. They are picking fights because the progressives on council support multimodal transit and the regressives don't. So this was not a meeting about bike lanes. This was a meeting about hate. And they hate change, they hate new things, and they hate people who are different. And we accept everybody on multimodal streets.
Okay, we're going to try to do 2 questions, 10 seconds each. Quick yes or no, if you can. We're going to start with Eddy. Would you support districting in Burbank? Eddy?
Absolutely not. It is a tool of the far right to suppress voters turnout, and it'd be a horrible thing for Burbank.
Emma?
No, I would not be in support of districting.
John?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question? I'll answer very quickly.
Would you support districting in Burbank?
No.
Hovanes?
No.
Konstantine?
The California Voting Rights Act says, all things being equal, districts favor the smaller grassroots candidate and representation of the populace more than at large. I actually agree with them. This is something I've studied for a very long time. Districts and ranked choice voting benefit the smaller grassroots candidate.
Mike?
In addition to promoting grassroots candidate, it also builds racial equity on councils. So absolutely, yes.
All right, next question, 10 seconds each. If a vacancy were to occur on the LA Metro or Metrolink board, would you want to join it? Eddy?
100% yes.
Emma?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll
John?
be in attendance at the meeting upcoming online.
John?
Yes.
Hovanes?
In an ideal world, yes, but I love Burbank too much.
Konstantine?
Yes, I'm currently working to field a candidate to unseat Aran Najarian.
Mike?
My focus is Burbank and housing, so I want to find a qualified candidate to be.
Okay, very last question, 10 seconds or less. Vision Zero is a concept where not you get rid of all traffic crashes, but that no one dies in the streets. Traffic calming, safer streets, things like that. Would you commit to making Burbank a Vision Zero city? Eddy?
Yes.
Emma?
Yes, absolutely. And that also includes pushing for more auditing on our vehicles, walking and biking.
John,
Yes.
Hovanes.
Yes, we need to empower our transportation directors to be able to make the necessary changes to save lives.
Konstantine.
Yes, and although we didn't use Vision Zero, we did vote to move forward to push for that.
Mike.
I'm surprised we're not already. So yes, very much.
Okay. We're going to move on to closing statements, and we're going to go ahead and start with Emma whenever you're ready.
So thank you all for joining this mobility debate. I've learned so much from every one of you, and thank you for the questions. I think there are so many departments that mobility touches upon. It's safety, accessibility, infrastructure change, green space, housing, parking. And so I just want to emphasize that collaboration as a council member would be the most important, and community engagement, getting out there, talking to our departments would be the way we can successfully implement our mobility plan. And as we move into the future, I think it's so important that we kind of anticipate the population density and take that into account when pushing for mobility, because things are just going to get harder and harder. So it's important that we make the changes now and not wait until there are problems in our back pocket.
Thank you. John?
Thank you guys for having me. I had a lot of fun. It's been very informative. We know getting people out of cars will enhance public safety and improve quality of life. There will be less frustration, more productivity. Burbank Transportation has so many great plans for its future, between the leveling up of bike lanes, one-way streets, scramble crosswalks, and the BRT. Our city is really advancing in the right direction, but we need help convincing people. People are apprehensive because it's new. They hear that something's going to change and they get nervous. But I know that these things will make Burbank a more livable city for generations to come. And I'm excited to go door to door and knock on everyone's door and get them excited about these initiatives and get them feeling like success is imminent for all of us. So thanks for having me, and looking forward to talking to you more.
Thank you. Hovanes?
Thanks, Streets for All, for this opportunity, and thank you to all attendees and questions and the fellow candidates. I think Burbank is sending kind of like an Olympic team of representatives and candidates to all throughout the community. So I'm really glad to see pro-progressive values, pro-transportation values. I think Burbank has a lot of good opportunities. We have a lot of good plans, and we are definitely have a lot of good potential for a future-oriented transportation community. So I'm really excited to continue to compete in this election, and I'm wishing everyone a lot of good luck as well.
Thank you. Konstantine?
I think my work on the council speaks for itself. I am running for re-election, and I'm the only candidate endorsed by both our state senator, Caroline Menjivar, and our state assembly member, Laura Friedman. But Burbank is not an island, so I have made connections with people outside of the city because our transit goes outside of the city and makes those connections. I'm endorsed by George Gascon, by Kenneth Mejia, by Nithya Rahman and Hugo Sardo Martinez, the vice mayor of Alhambra, Sasha Renee Perez, Glendale Councilmember Dan Brotman, Palmdale Councilmember Eric Olson. We're working on that high-speed rail project together. So I make these connections outside of Burbank because I know that transit doesn't just affect us here. People move and they don't care about the borders. And that is really important to me. When we're building the city, we have to see where our connections lie.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this opportunity. I humbly submit to you as an urban planner that we need to have a working class urban planner on our council. To that end, these organizations agree with me. The California Working Families Party has endorsed me. The DSA LA, Ground Game LA has endorsed. LA Progressive Voter Guide, City Council Member Konstantine Anthony, I'm a big fan of him. East Area Progressive Democrats, Filipino American LA Democrats, Glendale Council Member Dan Brotman, the aforementioned Culver City Council Member Daniel Lee, California Federation of Interpreters 39,000, Evolve California, the California High School Young Democrats. they're picking the planner, and I hope you will too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Eddy.
I owned my bakery for 18 years, and not a day went by when someone didn't ask me for a recipe. People even offered to buy my recipes. But what I always told them, you're asking the wrong question, because a recipe is just a list of instructions. What you need to find is a baker, someone that can take a list of instructions and actually make something delicious. And it's the same thing in politics. There's 9 people running for city council. What you have to do as a voter is ask, is this the person who could actually take an idea and take it someplace and get it done? I've been on the Transportation Commission for 2 years. During that 2 years, all of our resolutions have either been unanimous, a unanimous yes, or they've been 5 yeses with 2 abstentions. And the reason for that is that I'm a peacemaker. I believe real progress only happens when everybody's at the table and everybody's listening. And I think that's possible. We have all the ingredients we need right here in Burbank. We just need the right person to do it. So I urge you to vote for me, Eddy Polon, the baker, for Burbank City Council.
Well, thank you all so much. I really want to thank the candidates. It's not easy to sit for an hour and a half and answer questions within those minute time slots. So thank you for doing that. Good luck in your campaigns. So Streets for All is going to be sending everyone here and everyone not here, our endorsement questionnaire. So we invite you to fill that out. Thank you all for your nearly unanimous passion for safer streets. We disagree on the details, but it's really encouraging to see so many faces and younger people running for city council and engaging on these issues and caring about these issues. So thank you very much. Good luck in your campaigns, and good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.